You found your person. You survived the awkward first dates, the meeting the parents' dinner, and the joint IKEA trip that should have broken you up but somehow didn't. Now, all that's left is the paperwork. Except, the paperwork might be the weirdest part of your relationship. Because around the world, marriage law isn't just sign here. It's prove you killed 6 crows. Ask your husband before you get dentures. Or, by the way, saying I do means you just merged all your debts. Today we're walking through 50 of the dumbest, strangest, and sometimes genuinely disturbing marriage laws and rules that real people have had to live under. Quick disclaimer: laws change constantly. Some of these are historic holdovers or rarely enforced, and this is not legal advice. It's a guided tour of the ways systems can turn something as personal as love into a bureaucratic obstacle course. Let's start at the point where even death isn't a deal breaker. Number 1. No deal breakers, not even death. France is one of the few countries on Earth where you can legally marry someone who has already died a posthumous marriage, or necrogamy. The living partner applies to the president, proves the couple intended to marry, and if approved, the marriage is backdated to the day before the death. You don't inherit property, but you do become an official widow or widower. You can literally say, "Till death do us part," after the death already happened. Number 2. Child marriage loophole. Until 2022, Massachusetts allowed children under 18 to marry with a judge's approval and parental consent with no absolute minimum age written into the statute. Cases of girls 14 or 15 being married to adult men weren't just theory, they happened. The law has finally changed and the minimum age is now 18 with 0 exceptions, but dozens of U.S. states still allow child marriage under certain conditions today. Land of the free often meant free to sign away a teenager's future. Number 3. The quadruple wedding. In Kentucky, legislators apparently decided that if you marry the same wrong person more than 3 times, you need help. State law makes it illegal to remarry the same person a 4th time. You can marry and divorce them 3 times, but on attempt number 4, the clerk is supposed to stop you. The state has more faith in your bad judgment than your love story. Number 4. The common scold. Under Old English common law, a common scold was basically a woman accused of being a public nuisance, with her words a nag, a gossip, someone disturbing the peace with her mouth. Punishments included public humiliation and even ducking stools. The offense technically lingered in some U.S. jurisdictions into the 20th century before finally being struck down as unconstitutional. The law once literally tried to criminalize being an annoying wife. Number 5. The Crow Quest. In the town of Truro on Cape Cod, one of those widely cited dumb laws says a man should present either 6 blackbirds or 3 crows before being granted permission to marry. It's a relic from a time when protecting crops mattered more than romance, and like many weird laws, it's probably never enforced today, but it's still repeated in modern legal trivia lists. Will you marry me? Becomes, will you accept this dead bird as proof of my love? Number 6. The common property trap. In South Africa, unless a couple signs a specific contract before marriage, they're automatically in a community of property regime. Everything each spouse owns and owes is merged into a single joint estate. That includes pre-marriage debts. To keep assets separate, you have to pay for a notarized antenuptial contract in advance. Forget what's mine is yours. As a romantic metaphor, here it's the default setting for your credit score. Number 7. The cousin loophole. Utah bans first cousin marriage until age 65 or age 55 if both cousins can prove they are infertile. The idea is that once the risk of children is low, the state relaxes its ban. We can't approve this relationship unless you're old enough that biology gives up. Number 8. The royal veto. In Monaco, royal love comes with fine print. Members of the princely family who marry without the reigning monarch's consent can lose their title and succession rights. In practice, marriages are treated like state business, with the head of state having a formal say in who joins the dynasty. Before you propose, you check in with your future in-laws and your future head of state. Number 9. The polygamy sermon. Mississippi's criminal code still includes old-school language condemning polygamy and unlawful cohabitation, with penalties for marrying someone while you're already married or living with a second partner as if you were. It's not just a neutral rule about bigamy. The text reads like a moral sermon about public decency. The statute book sounds less like a law and more like a yelling pastor. Number 10. Suing your spouse's lover. In a handful of U.S. states including North Carolina, Mississippi, Hawaii, South Dakota, and a few others, a spouse can sue the person they claim stole their partner's affection. The claim is literally called alienation of affection, and juries have awarded large damages in modern cases. Your marriage can fail, and the aftermath includes a civil lawsuit over who broke your heart. Number 11. The denture veto. A widely repeated Vermont law says a woman once needed her husband's written permission to get false teeth. Whether it's still technically on the books or just legal folklore, the idea that a wife would need her husband's sign-off for basic dental care shows how deeply marriage law used to assume male control. Imagine taking a permission slip to your dentist, like it's a middle school field trip. Number 12. The foreign audit. In Saudi Arabia, men who want to marry foreign women often face extra hoops, official approvals, background checks, and medical certificates to prove they don't carry certain hereditary diseases. The state gets a say not just in whether you can marry, but whom, especially across nationality lines. Love across borders becomes a government-approved merger. Number 13. Bad breath law. Old Minnesota statutes have been cited for making it technically illegal for a husband to have sex with his wife if his breath smells of onions, garlic, or sardines. Whether or not anyone ever enforced this, the weirdly specific rule shows how legislatures once tried to micromanage even the privacy of a bedroom. Forget couples therapy. Someone thought the answer was, make halitosis a crime. Number 14. Haircut negotiation. Some historic Michigan provisions made it technically unlawful for a wife to cut her hair without her husband's permission. Even if they're dead letters today, these rules reveal a legal mindset where a husband had say over his wife's appearance, as if marriage created a partial property right in her body. Your hairstyle was a joint decision with the state and your spouse. Number 15. Accidental marriage. In a few U.S. jurisdictions that recognize common law marriage, including past practice in Kansas, you can end up legally married without a ceremony or license just by living together and presenting yourselves as spouses over time. That can mean you think you're just dating, but the law thinks you're entitled to spousal rights and spousal obligations. You never said "I do," but the tax code thinks you did. So far, we've had dead spouses, dead birds, and laws about bad breath and false teeth. Those are quirky. The next block of laws is where quirky turns into structural rules that quietly control who you can marry, how you can leave, and what happens to your life if you get it wrong. Let's look at what happens when the state decides it knows better than you whether your marriage should exist in the first place. Number 16. The fixed roof rule. In several countries historically, including parts of the UK and continental Europe, civil weddings had to be conducted in an approved venue with a fixed roof. Romantic cliffside ceremony? Legally risky. The idea was to keep marriages formal and controllable. The result was the government literally telling you what kind of sky you can get married under. Number 17. The no divorce zone. The Philippines and Vatican City are the only two places where there is no general divorce law. If your marriage breaks down, your options are separation or a complex and expensive annulment that argues the marriage was never valid to begin with. For ordinary people, that effectively means being trapped in a legal relationship long after the real one is gone. Number 18. Polygamy arbitrage. In India, a Hindu man is bound by a personal law system that requires monogamy. But if he converts to Islam, whose religious rules allow up to 4 wives, he can attempt to remarry under that system without divorcing his first wife. Courts have called this out as an abuse of conversion. But the clash between religious and civil rules has left women in legal limbo. Number 19. The cooling off period. Until recently, Japanese law required a woman to wait a set period, historically 100 days, formerly even longer after divorce, before remarrying, supposedly to avoid paternity confusion. Men had no such mandatory delay. Modern reforms have shortened or removed these waiting periods, but the idea that women alone had to sit in legal timeout says a lot about whose fertility the law cares about. Number 20. Marrying the insane. Older Tennessee law made it a crime to knowingly marry a person who was legally insane, essentially putting the burden on the partner to ensure the state agreed that their future spouse was competent. In practice, it highlighted how mental illness has been treated more as a criminal risk than a health issue even inside relationships. Number 21. The pauper problem. In Washington, marriage fraud can include obtaining a marriage license under false pretenses or using sham marriages for immigration or financial benefits. One quirky interpretation: a law that makes it illegal to mock or disrupt a marriage ceremony, a rule against becoming that one loud wedding crasher who pops off at exactly the wrong moment. Number 22. The double proxy wedding. Montana uniquely allows double proxy marriages. Neither bride nor groom has to be physically present. Two stand-ins can say the vows for them. It was created to help deployed military members, but it's also been used by couples abroad who want a legal U.S. marriage without ever setting foot in the state. You can be legally married to someone you've never been in the same room with, and neither of you showed up to the wedding. Number 23. Temporary marriage. Iran's legal system recognizes temporary marriages that can last from an hour to several years. In theory, they formalize relationships that don't fit permanent marriage. In practice, critics say they can function like state-sanctioned prostitution, with far fewer protections for women than in permanent unions. Number 24. The witchcraft clause. In 18th century England, if a woman bewitched a man into marriage, for example by pretending to be pregnant with his child, the marriage could be annulled, and she could, in theory, be prosecuted under witchcraft or fraud laws. It's an early version of "she tricked me into it," written directly into the power structure. Number 25. Proposal fraud. South Carolina still has remnants of laws that let someone sue for breach of promise to marry, essentially turning a broken engagement into a lawsuit. Historically, a woman could claim damages if a man proposed, she relied on it, and he bailed. Modern courts are less sympathetic, but the logic lingers. The law once treated an engagement like a business contract. Number 26. Marriage on a dare. Several legal systems recognize getting married as a jest or a dare as grounds for annulment. If you can persuade a court that you never truly intended a real marriage, it was a joke that got out of hand in Vegas, you might be allowed to unwind it. The fact that this needs to exist tells you a lot about human decision-making under alcohol and neon lights. Number 27. Head and master. Until the early 1980s, Louisiana's head and master law gave husbands unilateral control over community property. He could sell the house or take on debt without his wife's consent. The U.S. Supreme Court struck this model down in 1981, but the law was on the books for decades, shaping generations of marriages. Number 28. The birthday rule. In Samoa, an oft-quoted law says it's illegal to forget your wife's birthday. Whether that exact text exists in enforcement today or not, the story has stuck because it feels emotionally right. Somewhere out there, a legislature decided marital absent-mindedness was such a problem, it needed a statute. Number 29. Marriage by half-sibling. New York's incest laws are surprisingly specific. Some combinations of relatives are clearly banned, but others, like marriage between certain step or half relations, fall into legal gray zones or narrow exceptions. The result is a family tree that's partly moral judgment, partly legislative accident. Number 30. Royal adultery. Under very old English treason law, adultery with the king's wife or the wife of his eldest son was treated as high treason, historically punishable by death. Modern reforms and the end of capital punishment mean no one is going to the gallows for a royal affair today, but the idea that some people's cheating once counted as an attack on the state still lingers in legal history. We've seen laws that treat marriage like a contract, like a moral sermon, and like a national security issue. The back half of this list gets darker. Here, the rules stop being funny trivia and turn into something else. ways that governments, courts, and even religious authorities lock people into marriages, control their bodies, and decide whose safety matters. Let's keep going. But this time, notice how many of these rules have one thing in common. They hit women harder, and they're still not fully gone. Number 31. Guardian's signature. In some Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia and Qatar, women have historically needed a male guardian's approval, often a father or brother, to marry. Recent reforms have chipped away at some guardianship powers, but rights groups report that in practice, many women still cannot marry without a male relative's consent, codified in family laws and reinforced by courts. Your adult decision about who to marry is legally treated like a teenager asking to borrow the car. Number 32. Naming approval. Denmark has a strict approved names list. Parents who want to give their child an unusual first name, or a surname that doesn't fit traditional patterns, must get special permission. For married couples, that means the state has a say not just in your marital status, but in the names your new family is allowed to carry into the future. Number 33. The shared surname. Japanese civil law still requires married couples to share a single family name on official documents. In practice, about 95% of couples choose the husband's surname, which means women are expected to erase their birth name in most legal contexts. Japan's Supreme Court has upheld the law despite repeated challenges on gender equality grounds. The law pretends it's neutral. The culture makes it one-sided. Number 34. The invisible couple. Japan is the only G7 country that still doesn't recognize same-sex marriage at the national level. Several local courts have ruled that the ban violates constitutional guarantees of equality, and some cities issue limited partnership certificates. But those don't grant the full rights of marriage. No joint adoption, no automatic inheritance, no spousal visa. You can share a life, but on paper, the law pretends you're roommates. Number 35. The groom's intoxication. Scottish law allows a marriage to be challenged if one party was so intoxicated during the ceremony that they couldn't understand what they were agreeing to. Registrars are expected to refuse to conduct the ceremony if they think someone is obviously drunk. It's a rare example of the law stepping in to protect you from your own bad decisions in real time. Number 36. The half-in marriage. Some historic marriage statutes allowed courts to grant limited separation or special property orders if a spouse was a habitual drunkard, without granting a full divorce. The marriage stayed legally intact, but key rights were carved out or shifted. You weren't fully married or fully free. You were in a half-in, half-out legal status defined entirely by someone else's drinking. Number 37. Sunday parachuting widow. An often cited Florida oddity says that a widow who goes skydiving on a Sunday can be breaking the law. Like many of these, it's more legend than lived reality. But what makes it memorable is the pattern. Moral rules about how a respectable widow should behave, written as if the state owns her grief schedule. Number 38. Outlawing shallow love. Wisconsin statutes about marriage fraud and sham marriages are so broadly worded that legal commentators joke they sound like an attempt to outlaw marrying for money. Of course, the law can't actually measure your affection. It can only police the paperwork and make certain motives, like getting immigration status, criminal if you admit them. Number 39. Divorce cooling off. In 2021, China introduced a mandatory 30-day cooling off period for couples filing for consensual divorce. If either spouse withdraws the application during that time, the divorce is canceled. Officials said it was to reduce impulsive breakups. Critics argue it traps people in abusive or hopeless marriages for at least another month and makes leaving logistically harder. Number 40. Dog divorce. A widely publicized case in Kuwait involved a couple divorcing after the husband refused to allow his wife to keep her dog, framed by some religious authorities as incompatible with their interpretation of Islamic practice. While not a statute on the dog itself, the case shows how religiously framed marital expectations can become decisive legal grounds to end a marriage. The real third person in the marriage was a dog, and the court took sides. Number 41. The lustful text. Indonesia's broad anti-pornography laws have been criticized for being vague enough that, in theory, even private consensual sexual messages between spouses could be interpreted as illegal, obscene content. While enforcement tends to target public or commercial material, the chilling effect is clear. Your intimate life becomes something you could, in theory, be prosecuted for. Number 42. Marry your rapist, loopholes. Until very recently, several countries had laws that let a rapist escape prosecution if he married his victim. Some have finally repealed these provisions after global outrage, but human rights organizations report that at least a dozen jurisdictions still retain versions of this loophole or related practices. The law treated marriage not as a safe place after violence, but as the cover-up for it. Number 43. The common scold's husband. An old Wichita ordinance reportedly allowed a man to seek legal remedy if his wife's constant nagging became a public nuisance. Eventually, modern courts and councils had to acknowledge that "she annoys me" is not a valid legal harm. The rule is a fossil of the idea that men should be protected from women's voices, not the other way around. Number 44. Head of household. By law. In a number of countries today, civil codes still name the husband as head of the household, with specific legal powers, choosing the family home, administering property, or expecting a wife's legal obedience. International surveys still find dozens of economies where family law gives husbands explicit authority over wives' movements or work. Somewhere on earth, a woman signs a marriage certificate and, in the fine print, agrees to be a legal subordinate. Number 45. No Kissing Sunday. In some U.S. states and towns, leftover blue laws once banned public displays of affection, including a husband kissing his wife on Sundays. Most of these rules are dead letters now, but they're a reminder that for a long time, the state literally scheduled when married people could be visibly affectionate without risking a fine. Number 46. Censoring Romeo and Juliet. Old school and library rules in parts of the U.S. restricted students from reading obscene romantic literature, including heavily edited versions of Romeo and Juliet. While not strictly marriage law, it shaped how generations first learned about relationships. Passion was something to be blacked out with a marker, not discussed honestly. Number 47. The ironclad sentence. Back to the Philippines. Not only is there no general divorce, but the main alternative annulment can be prohibitively expensive, complex, and slow, requiring lawyers, psychological evaluations, and years in court. For many couples, especially women with fewer resources, that means the right to leave a destructive marriage exists only on paper. Number 48. Forced to stay, too young to consent. Globally, an estimated hundreds of millions of women and girls alive today were married before age 18. In many countries, the law sets 18 as a theoretical minimum, but then carves out exceptions. Parental consent, judicial approval, pregnancy. In the U.S. alone, child marriage is still legal in the majority of states, and several have no minimum age when exemptions apply. The law calls it a marriage contract. Every other word we have for it is coercion. Number 49. Treason of the heart. Still on the books. Even where old royal adultery treason laws are no longer enforced, parts of the legal code in monarchies still treat offenses involving the royal family as qualitatively different from ordinary crimes. Adultery with a royal consort may no longer be a capital offense, but the historical record shows how marriage to power created a different moral category, one where cheating wasn't just betrayal, it was quasi-political. Number 50. Marital rape doesn't count. For decades, many countries explicitly exempted husbands from rape laws. As of recent counts, at least dozens of countries still don't fully criminalize marital rape, and others have partial exemptions or weak enforcement. The underlying idea is chilling, that consent was permanently granted at the altar and can never be withdrawn. If there's a thread running through these 50 laws, it's this. We use legal systems to protect marriage, but we're weirdly comfortable using them to control the people inside it. Sometimes that control is silly, like outlawing garlic breath. Sometimes it's bureaucratic, like, sign this or all your assets merge by default. And sometimes it's brutal when the law traps people in marriages they never freely chose or refuses to recognize violence simply because the abuser is a spouse. The point of this list isn't, look how backwards other countries are. Many of these rules are ours. The US, Europe, modern democracies that like to talk about freedom. If anything in here made you think, wait, that can't still be true, that's a good starting place. Because none of this changes until people who aren't directly hurt by these laws decide they're unacceptable anyway. If you want more deep dives into the absurd fine print that quietly shapes everyday life, from HOA rules to school dress codes to workplace policies, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and tell me in the comments. Which of these marriage rules would make you say nope at the altar?